You ever notice how the men women want the most are the ones who don't chase anyone? I used to think it was luck or timing until I started watching something happen again and again. In every room, every social circle, every environment, there's always that one man who doesn't orbit women like everyone else. He isn't desperate, he isn't reaching, he isn't auditioning. He just exists with this calm, self-contained presence that somehow pulls more attention than the loudest guy in the room. And the crazy thing is, he's usually been single for a long time. People look at him and assume he's lonely, or picky, or emotionally distant. But they never understand that what women see is something completely different. They see a man who stands alone and doesn't flinch. A man who doesn't need a relationship to validate him. A man who actually likes himself enough not to jump into anything just to avoid silence. In a world where everyone is terrified of being alone, his comfort with solitude becomes a form of quiet power. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I always chased. I always tried too hard. And the harder I tried, the more invisible I became. It wasn't until I pulled back, focused on myself, and stopped using relationships as a form of identity that something shifted. My stillness became strength. My independence became energy, and women felt it instantly. That's when it hit me. The appeal of long-term single men isn't that they're unavailable, it's that they're whole. Women feel that difference. They'll never admit it directly, but they can sense whether a man is standing on his own foundation or leaning on someone else's. The long-term single man has built himself brick by brick. His confidence doesn't come from attention. His calm doesn't come from validation. He isn't chasing because he has options, and he knows his value doesn't rise or fall depending on who texts back. There's a type of mystery that forms around a man like that. Not the fake, calculated mystery men try to mimic. Real mystery. The kind that forms when a man genuinely isn't trying to impress anyone. When he's comfortable in his own silence. When he doesn't rush to fill every pause with noise. People lean in because he's not trying to be understood. And that's what makes everyone want to understand him.
Women pick up on this energy faster than men do. They see the emotional neutrality, the discipline, the self-governing nature of a man who doesn't beg, doesn't overshare, doesn't cling. They feel the difference between a man who wants them and a man who needs them. And the truth is, women don't want to be needed in a desperate way. They want to be chosen by a man who would still be perfectly fine without them. That's why his presence feels different. He doesn't get dragged into drama. He doesn't chase chaos, and he doesn't lose himself in the idea of romance. His solitude has taught him patience. His discipline has taught him restraint. His independence has taught him that peace is more valuable than attention. And that calm energy in a world addicted to emotional extremes feels like gravity. When he walks into a room, he isn't trying to impress anyone. He's just aligned with himself. And alignment is louder than words. Women see a man who isn't ruled by impulse, who doesn't fear silence, who doesn't crumble without constant affection. To them, that's stability. And stability is rare. Rare things become desirable, and desirable things get chased. The irony is almost funny. The men who try hardest get overlooked. The men who don't try at all, but build themselves quietly and consistently, become the ones who feel impossible to ignore. That's the paradox of modern attraction. When you stop chasing, you stop repelling. When you stop performing, you start radiating. And when you stop needing, you start attracting. And the long-term single man has mastered that without even trying.
What most people don't understand is that a long-term single man doesn't become this way by accident. He becomes this way because life forced him inward. Solitude wasn't his first choice, but it became his greatest teacher. While other men bounced from relationship to relationship trying to fill every emotional gap, he chose to face the silence instead of running from it. And that silence molded him into something rare. At some point, every man reaches a moment where he realizes that chasing love only makes it run faster. I had that moment too. You care too much, you give too quickly, you expect too deeply, and suddenly you're the one left standing with nothing but your own reflection. That's when something inside you begins to shift. You stop trying to force connections. You stop believing that companionship equals completion. You pull back, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. And that clarity becomes the root of your power. A long-term single man is calm because he survived the storm. He had his heart broken, maybe more than once. He trusted the wrong people. He tolerated more than he should have. And at some point, he reached a point where he said, enough. That's when solitude stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like freedom. He began to rebuild himself without external voices, without emotional noise, without the expectation of being someone else's source of happiness. He became responsible for his own peace. That kind of man doesn't rush anymore. He doesn't fall blindly. He doesn't invest recklessly. He's learned that emotional discipline is strength, and women feel that strength instantly. There's a steadiness in him, a sense that he's not at the mercy of his desires. He wants connection, but he refuses dependency. His presence feels like a safe place because he knows how to regulate himself. He doesn't explode, he doesn't panic, he doesn't spiral. He observes, processes, responds. That emotional maturity is almost extinct now, and extinction makes anything valuable.
Women aren't drawn to his solitude. They're drawn to what it did to him, the depth it created, the standards it sharpened, the boundaries it carved. He doesn't allow drama because he's lived through the cost of it. He doesn't tolerate disrespect because he's already rebuilt himself once and he's not doing it again. He doesn't chase because he finally sees the difference between desire and desperation. And women sense this with almost primal intuition. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. He doesn't need to raise his voice to command respect. His calm does it for him. He doesn't need to compete for attention. His stillness captures it naturally. He doesn't need to pretend he's strong. His resilience speaks louder than any performance ever could. And that inner gravity makes every woman wonder one thing. Who taught him to be this self-contained? But here's the truth. Nobody taught him. Life did. Pain did. Silence did. See, when a man spends enough time alone, he begins to understand something that most people never realize. Peace is expensive. It takes years to earn. It takes discipline to protect. And once he has it, he won't trade it for anyone who brings chaos. That's why he moves differently. That's why he gives slowly. That's why he chooses selectively. He knows the cost of letting the wrong person in. Women sense this the moment they meet him. His attention feels deliberate. His responses feel thoughtful. His presence feels grounded. There's no anxiety, no performance, no neediness. He doesn't make her responsible for his happiness. And paradoxically, that's what makes her want to share her happiness with him. Because deep down, every woman craves a man who doesn't drain her, but stabilizes her. She feels the difference between a man who wants company and a man who enjoys life on his own and simply invites her in. She can tell that if she walks away, his world won't crumble, and that's exactly what makes her want to stay.
The long-term single man becomes attractive not because he's alone, but because solitude transformed him into someone who's not afraid to be alone ever again. And that fearlessness, that internal certainty, is what draws women closer like nothing else. Because in a world full of men who collapse without attention, the man who thrives without it becomes unforgettable.
There is a moment in every woman's mind when she looks at a long-term single man and realizes something unsettling. He is not alone because he failed. He is alone because he refuses to settle. That realization changes everything. Suddenly, he's not just a man without a partner. He's a man who chooses his partner. And that shift in power transforms the entire dynamic. A long-term single man becomes the rarest man in the room because he has options but no desperation. He has standards but no insecurity. He has depth but no emotional chaos. Most men only experience themselves through relationships, but a man who spent years alone knows himself without any external mirror. That kind of identity is unshakable. And women feel that solidity in ways they can't always explain. He's not afraid of being misunderstood. He's not desperate to correct assumptions. He doesn't adjust himself to keep someone from leaving. He's lived through silence long enough to know that losing someone isn't the end of anything. It's just the removal of noise. That detachment isn't coldness. It's control. He knows how to hold emotion without drowning in it. That control is what women crave today more than anything else. Not muscles, not money, not status. Emotional consistency. She knows that if she storms, he won't crumble. If she withdraws, he won't chase blindly. If she tests him, he won't lose himself. He has mastered the art of staying centered when everything around him shakes. And in a world where chaos is common, a grounded man becomes addictive. Women also sense something else. He's not impressed by what impresses most men. He's not moved by validation, flattery, or superficial charm. He has seen too much, felt too much, grown too much. He knows the difference between temporary excitement and real connection. He is impossible to seduce through performance, only through authenticity. And that terrifies some women just as much as it attracts them.
Because a man like this cannot be controlled. He cannot be manipulated through fear of loss. He cannot be pressured through emotional volatility. He cannot be bought with attention. A man who has lived alone long-term becomes immune to the games that most modern dating revolves around. And when a woman realizes he doesn't need her, he only chooses her, she feels something rare: respect. But here's where the story goes deeper. Long-term single men often carry a secret the world doesn't see. Their peace wasn't inherited. It was earned through battles nobody applauded. They rebuilt after heartbreak without witnesses. They overcame loneliness without comfort. They learned to love themselves without encouragement. Their solitude wasn't the absence of love. It was the training ground for becoming someone capable of giving real love. That's why their affection hits differently. It's not loud, it's not reckless, it's not impulsive, it's intentional. When he lets a woman in, it means something. When he gives his time, it's measured. When he gives his presence, it's real. He's not offering her an escape from loneliness. He's offering her a place inside a life he already built. And that is far more valuable than a man who hands over his world because he has nothing else to give. Here's the truth nobody admits. Women don't fall in love with the long-term single man because he's distant. They fall in love because he is disciplined, because he is selective, because he is whole. He doesn't attach to anyone who knocks. He waits for the one who matches his peace.
His value isn't in his solitude. His value is in what solitude made him become. And here's the final paradox. When a man no longer fears losing love, he finally becomes worthy of the kind of love that stays. Women don't admire him because he's unavailable. They admire him because he's unshakable. He is not held together by validation or attention. He is held together by purpose, discipline, and emotional sovereignty. He can walk alone, and that is why people want to walk with him. So now I'm curious. Why do you think women are drawn to men who aren't chasing them? Is it confidence, discipline, mystery, or something deeper? Drop your thoughts. I want to hear your take.